Welcome to Next TMT Talks. I'm David Bloom, the co-founder of Next TMT Talks, my co-founder Daniel Frankel. In this flagship weekly edition of our conversations, we get into why cars are more like TVs these days, why Stephen Colbert's next gig should be on community access television, that complicated state of local sports networks really isn't as bad as broadcasts defenders like to claim. Netflix's newest grab for all of our attention, the latest AI video adventures at YouTube, the White House, and at this week's AI on the Lot conference, among much else. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, Daniel.
Hello. Hello.
So you spent a fair amount of time talking about some of what's happening now that we're well into the baseball season, probably about a quarter of the way in. It's like, the broadcast defenders are like, oh, it's so hard on the poor viewers because they can't just turn on the TV and everything's right there in front of them like it was in the old days of 4 years ago.
Well, you have folks like Senator Elizabeth Warren. I call her Liz. We go way back.
Liz.
She was 10 years ago kind of an anti-cable TV person. She's always been
given the community service and the impossibility of canceling your service and the indifference they had to customers and the ever increasing amount of cost, you could see why somebody like her might be not so big on them, right?
Yeah, cable, that wasn't a high point for that industry. We were just coming around to collective consumer consciousness that this sucks. There are alternatives for watching television, and we don't have to put up anymore. We're mad as hell. So we all collectively cut the cord, or half of us did. And there are going to be trade-offs, man. You gotta go out there and fend for yourself. You gotta cobble together. As Victoria Giuliano tried to get a business going. I don't know if you remember that, Cobble Cord. I always thought that was a really good idea. She's a former HBO executive who wanted to help consumers figure out the game. And it's still a confusing one. I guess sports fans are having trouble, evidenced by the new populist revolt being exploited in D.C. The NFL and its streaming deals are supposedly the offshoot of their greed and causing consumers to spend too much and confusing consumers.
I'm not sure. Daniel, I'm not sure. I just want to make sure this doesn't go too far from this. You mentioned the grassroots, and it feels to me very astroturfy as local broadcast tries to save its ass and keep as much as it can of the NFL on its airwaves.
There's a lot of that, right? There's the Rupert Murdoch component influenced in the Trump administration, which obviously, or it looks like, I should say, spurred the DOJ to investigate or probe the NFL's antitrust exemption. If you're not going to be in broadcasts, which is the reason we gave it to you, the ability to have your owners negotiate TV deals collectively. If you're streaming, not broadcasting, why should we let you have this?
And of course, there's nothing in that exemption from 1961 that, I mean, there was only broadcast then, but there's nothing that says that this only counts if there's something more than broadcast coming down the line. There's no provision, and there's been none made in the 65 years since either. Let's just point out, Congress has never seen fit to modify that either. And yet we have these confabulations of congressional intent. So that being said.
I'm going to the NFL rabbit hole, but that has been sort of the focus of it. There have been kind of adhering to what I was saying earlier about populist opportunism. Terry Baldwin is a Wisconsin senator, a Democrat, who, along with a local House Republican, put together a bill, the Save Our Sports bill, that talks about how sports is getting out of hand. It's streaming too much.
It's Tammy Baldwin, by the way, former veteran. A veteran who lost, I think, at least one limb to her service, and bless her for that. So thank you for your service, Senator. But you're wrong on this one, probably.
Well, I like senators who have all their appendages, Dave.
Well, you
I
and Don
can't,
Trump both,
I
but
can't, I
you
can't,
know,
I
that's
can't.
another thing you and the president have in common.
The prestigious, we don't have too many things in common, other than a will to power, which he has succeeded in. So the
That's what people
the
think
argument.
about when they think about next
Let me
TMT is our will to power, by the way.
okay. Let me get this into baseball. So last month, the DOJ expands the scope of the probe to include baseball, which is a very different organism than the NFL. I mean, both of them are trying to split the lid in many different ways and expand into their national profile than streaming. But there's a lot more games, and most of them are on local television, which
Yeah, a
has
lot
been,
more. There's 2,000 games a year, 2,400 games a year or something like that, right? I mean, that
right.
alone is crazy. For a very long time, virtually every day, there's 10 or 12 games a day. So,
With
plus
regional
playoffs.
sports networks going away, you have up to 15 teams that are now kind of refugees that are relying on Major League Baseball and MLB.TV to distribute their direct-to-consumer streaming channels. They're rebuilding their cable carriage of these channels. They're carving out side TV deals, broadcast deals with local broadcasters for like 10 games a year. And at the same time, Rob Manfred, the commissioner, is expanding the scope of national deals. The Apple TV a few years ago, Sunday Morning Baseball went from Peacock to Roku, back to Peacock again. So there's been some confusion and volatility. Consumers don't know where to go, but I can tell you this, and this is the example we included in the newsletter this week. If you were, say, a Washington Nationals fan or Atlanta Braves fan, to watch the game, and if you subscribe to Comcast, you had to get their ultimate tier, which is their up tier, and you were paying like $150 at least after like the RSN fee and the DVR fee and your breathing fee, whatever. It's very, very expensive. If you know a little bit about the television business or where things are located, how to stream, you can cut that bill in half. So more personalization, more consumer choice, more games, less costs. It is complicated, but all it's being explained incorrectly. I think there's misinformation and obfuscation of the truth here, and it makes me just, it chaps my eye.
I am shocked that there is misinformation and obfuscation in something that has a political and a very large $1 billion
Yeah. So
plus price tag attached, but that is how it's going to be. I will note that this is a fascinating time in the sports broadcasting, and I use broadcasting in the biggest term way possible era, because you've got the NFL doing its stuff. There are conversations this week going on at the SEC about whether they will go along with some version of an expanded college football playoff championship,
yeah,
process from 12. They want 16. The Big Ten, the only other vote that matters in this, all the other conferences are along for the ride, wants 24, which, is crazy, which really tears up the college football schedule and shifts it earlier and maybe gets rid of the national championship games. The SEC, weirdly enough, wants to keep theirs because they make as much as $100 million off of their championship game every year. And it's basically a big conference, get together. Everybody comes into Atlanta and parties down and reconnects, and they make $100
yeah.
freaking million dollars. You could say,
I
and they
just don't.
keep that.
I can
So
see a logic to moving into a 16-team format. That was the size of the men's basketball tournament at one point. I think during the Wooden
yeah,
era, it was 16 teams. It was restrictive, and it's easier to have a big tournament for basketball. And one could argue that for a sport like that, you need more games to determine a champion, I guess. For football, we know who the best teams are. I think
right.
16
It's
would
called the
be,
regular season. It's called the
yeah,
regular season. It's like, play it out. Have a
it's such
conference
a
champion. Great. Yeah.
it's such a grueling process. You can only play one game a week. I just don't, it would mean USC would actually make the playoffs Maybe.
It would also mean that some other random teams that were like 8-4 would make it. But beyond that, and you'll love this, the power behind the throne pushing the Big Ten to do what it's doing is none other than Rupert Murdoch's Fox, which did not bid on the college football playoff championship games, the last
Right.
round, and missed out. And an expansion gives them a way back in. So
Ah,
some things, I don't know that you quite necessarily, because I didn't until recently, make that connection, but that's the nexus there that's pushing the Big Ten so hard. And so it's really between the SEC, which is having its conference meetings this week down in Sandestin, Florida. Um, Also, another kind of football that kind of matters. My team, the Arsenal Gooners, won the English Premier League. This is a team that will make $1 billion this year. Will generate $1
wait, I
billion
can't
this
talk
year.
about the OKC Thunder.
No, just listen for a second, because it is the biggest sports league outside the NFL.
Okay.
Make $1 billion this year. It's owned by the same people that own the Los Angeles Rams. Stan Kroenke, by the
Yeah.
way, to
Sharp
bring
guy.
it back to something you actually can understand. And they also own the Denver
Football.
Nuggets and I think the Avalanche in Denver. But they're making $1 billion, and they may not make money because they've spent so much on their players. Which is beginning to look a little bit like college football, because everybody's out over their skis and how much they're spending with NIL beyond the $21.5 million allocated for their entire athletic program to pay athletes. So there's a whole lot of hurting coming down the pike. That's all I'm saying.
$100 million contract here, $100 million contract there. It's real money.
And actually, it's 100 million pounds in England. It's really fascinating to watch how this may play out, though, in England with them. One of the teams, West Ham, the 20th richest team in world soccer, got relegated. It's one of the things the English Premier League does. The bottom three teams get sent down a level.
The
West
Spurs?
Ham, no, that's Tottenham, almost got sent down. It's the arch rival of Arsenal. This would have made the greatest year in Arsenal
Ted
history.
Lasso before I went into the big house. That's another thing I don't have in common with Trump. I'm here and he's not.
He's not. But it would have made the greatest year in Arsenal history for them to not only win the English Premier League championship after coming in second 3 straight years, but having their arch rival, which is 4 miles away. Their stadiums are 4 miles apart in North London. If it had been sent down, it had avoided it by 1 point out of 80 or so. So anyway, it was still a pretty great year for Arsenal. Congrats to them. But this about spending too much. And there's a really great piece in Variety about London, the cricket rights.
I mean, you looked at like the quest in Chicago to like replace Soldier Field, and I guess they were talking about going to Indiana at one point. And this isn't just any NFL franchise. This is the Bears. I mean, this is
one of the original 6 or whatever it was. Yeah.
It's a foundational
and an iconic stadium right by the lakeside and all that. Cricket. I was just reading a really interesting guy, the guy who heads GeoStar, who is a partner with James Murdoch. Here we go again, more Murdochs, right?
Yeah,
is talking about how cricket rights, which are coming up next year, are so over their skis at about $6 billion, second only to the NFL. But they want the cricket boards that govern the sport, again, are wanting so much more money, but there are fewer bidders now. Like GeoStar was a merger of Disney and Viacom's operations in India, and there are fewer bidders. So, and they're just saying, hey, too much. There's more. They're putting more games on. They're not going to spend more than kind of where they are. And he's kind of warning this is going to be a big deal. And again, it's weirdly one of the most popular sports in the world. It's just that it's specific parts of the world that don't include like your neighborhood in West Adams of Los Angeles.
You mean cricket? Yeah, we don't play a lot of it here.
Yeah, you don't play a lot of cricket there. But the point being, these are all big sports with big TV rights in multiple countries and multiple parts of the globe, where the spending on TV rights has gotten too far. And now we're going to see how this plays out. as renegotiations for the next round come around. So just a
I'll say
bit
one
there.
more thing. The talk was with Mark Lowney, former Warner Warner Brothers Disney researcher. He's now senior consultant for Hub, our sponsor. Uh, did some really interesting research on the Major League Baseball avid fan. They over-index on traditional MVPDs and virtual MVPDs, which isn't surprising. It would explain why when things go streaming, it's not their bundle anymore. They get frustrated. But this is what I didn't know. They're affluent, like $90,000 plus household income, mostly white. Only 12% of the avid fanhood is African American,
Which is pretty much like the makeup of the Major League Baseball teams as well. It's like 6% black, I think, these days. So
yeah. I mean, just there's no incentive for kids to play that sport. Black kids, all of it is white kids from the suburbs whose parents pay enormous amounts of money to put them in travel teams and stuff like that.
and all
It's
the equipment and all that stuff it definitely adds up. And you've got to have gigantic ballparks as opposed to any place you
right.
can stick a modern equivalent of a peach basket. So
Yeah, so there's, that's something that baseball will have to address. But what was also surprising was the avid fan skews mid 40s, which I would think I guessed higher. So the data's in the newsletter.
football fans, that's about what football fans are, except when you go on to like Amazon, where it's like 8 years younger. It's
Yeah.
significantly skews younger on like Netflix and Amazon football fans compared to regular ones, which I think are mid 40s, if I remember. It's been a while since I've looked at those numbers, but still notable, right? So,
So also they had, and we ran this graphic a month ago when they put out the report. They looked at the sports that have the most fan friction right now in terms of frustration about streaming and disbursement. NFL was tops, baseball second, which I think it's the local angle. I think people are there's a lot of disruption in terms of the RSNs right now, and that's what they're reacting to. But
yeah, because you're used to just turning on the local RSN, now
right,
dead in many cities, and just having the game on. Like you can still do that in LA with Ben Scully gone, but the game still on Sportsnet on the cable provider if you're in the right areas, and you can see all the games of the company, the team that has actually won the last two World Series and is a very powerful team again this year. That all being said, we
oh, I
should get into
saw
some other stuff.
an airship today. I think it was I don't know where it's coming. It was promoting your panel. And it was all over the Knicks game today. Billboards. It was a next TMT as well. They had that. You want to talk about
Okay.
automotive, right?
Well,
I was
we'll
trying
talk
to
about
segue
automotive.
for
I
you
just want
there.
to mention it on Wednesday. I'll moderate a panel on the
Is
scale
that happening?
opportunity coming for in-car apps, and this is a real shift. But the way I think about it, TV OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, figured out just really, wouldn't you say, the last 3 years? Like they kind of got it. It's like, oh my God, we have this tremendous platform and we can decide kind of who's on it, who we promote, who we help market stuff. We have our stuff with Looper about merchandising. They make some decisions about all of that stuff and they make money and they scrape off a chunk of the money that comes through there. They are now a toll booth in
When I
television. That's
when
coming
I
to cars. That's what's interesting.
when I was a younger reporter working for Reed Elsevier, you were there during the day that day. So you were in the film team. I was working covering home entertainment, and I worked for an editor who would watch DVDs on a portable player that he plugged into a cigarette lighter for DC power as he drove from the Inland Empire to downtown or mid city Los Angeles. And I
Yeah,
just
what
thought,
could go wrong?
that's just fucking nuts. Why? Why
But
is that a
but
good
see, you're
idea?
missing the point. So first of all, the new cars these days, like I will have on on my panel a guy from BMW who was on a panel I did like 3 months ago with DEG's NTech Fest. The BMW guy, BMW, for instance, has sensors in the car that keep track of what's going on there. They differentiate between what's available to be seen by the driver on the screens the driver can see and what can be seen in the back seat on the separate screens.
Oh, I know. I was
There.
driving I have a Hyundai, a 2023 EV, the
Yeah.
Ioniq, and
Yeah.
you can't look at the navigation or adjust the navigation for the driver's seat without putting it in park. I can see
Right.
conservative talk radio. We're living in a nanny state. It's kind of that way with these cars. It's loaded with
Well, a
sensors.
little bit, but it's also kind of like trying to like put on your seatbelt and shut up. I mean, we have enough distracted drivers, but the point is there are apps and functions that are entertainment's part of it, but other things as well that could get very interesting when all of a sudden the car kind of knows where people are inside the car, who's awake and watching things, who's engaged, multiple screens to be able to show things of different types for different audiences. I think that gets really interesting. And now we're hitting a scale. And one of the people that I'm going to have is from Waymo, and that's a whole different experience, right? So driverless car for rent like Uber or Lyft. And you're only in the car for the 15 or 20 minutes this takes to go from point A to point B. You don't own the car. So what kinds of apps do you make available for your passengers? How do you build that experience to make it as pleasurable as possible for them while they're sitting in the back of a Jaguar F-Type or a Zoox little minibus thing? But those are really interesting questions that we'll be talking about on Wednesday. And then I'll be going to AI on the Lot, where, among other people, there'll be a whole lot of, it'll be at the Amazon Prime Studios in Culver City. And
I'm going to I don't know if you saw, I signed up.
They're expecting 2,000 people to show up. 2,000. I heard that from Todd Taratsis, the guy who runs the thing. This is the 4th year. It's on the lot. It's on a real lot, like a real lot. This is a place where they filmed Gone with the Wind 70, 90 years ago. So really interesting in that regard. Amazon's going to be showing off all its different tools about what it's doing and its partnerships. John Irwin, who they just did a deal with to do this hybrid real-time filmmaking experience with this company there, this joint venture called Innovative Dreams. Gareth Edwards, who did the Rogue One Star Wars movie and a Godzilla movie, among other things, did The Creator more recently. He will be talking about all of this stuff. They're going to have a bunch of the conference is really good about really nitty gritty. Here's how you plug this thing into this thing to make a workflow that creates this thing. And then they have contests like the Synthetica contest is really interesting. Bernie Sue, who's the only guy to win 3 interactive Emmys for the stuff, is debuting his new movie, which uses AI tools to help create a kind of interactive experience that really wasn't possible without AI. It's really fascinating stuff that Bernie's doing. Saw him a few days ago. There's a lot of cool stuff coming up. So that's going on. At the same time, YouTube is taking down all kinds of deepfake, fraudulent videos. People like Taylor Swift pimping for Medicare fraud schemes. She's not, but they deepfake her, and it's pretty compelling stuff. They're taking those down, while at the same time they're allowing a new function that allows a creator to put themselves into somebody else's video. What could go wrong?
My son turned me on to these AI generated Star Wars videos on Reels, and Hayden Christensen, the whole cast has been recreated to just startling effect. I mean, you can't differentiate the actor from the fraud, and it's filling in. It's the narrative. Some of the narrative arcs are kind of interesting. One deals with an imperial admiral talking to Emperor Palpatine right after the Death Star is blown up in A New Hope, and telling him what happened. And it's just, others deal with
Yeah,
like
how would you
Yoda.
like that gig? Let's tell Palpatine, oh, it didn't work out. We blew up your giant Death Star. Sorry about that, big guy,
Yeah,
pal.
yeah. He tells him, pray next time you
I'm
talk
gonna
to
get
me about
choked
that
up.
nukes. Yeah, I wouldn't take that job. I think I would
No,
go
I'd
into.
send somebody. I'd send somebody. It's like, you're gunning for my. You should tell him. You should do that. Uh, the other thing that's sort of really important on the AI front, the Trump White House has gone from all in. We're going to just develop as fast as we can and get these things up because the Chinese are racing us and we can't fall behind them. It's a existential threat to be left behind on AI development. We're not going to check things to holy crap, this whole Claude mythos thing that can find giant ancient vulnerabilities in some of the most widely used software in the world is a big deal on national security grounds to, and let's get rid of the AI czar, David Sachs,
Yeah,
to, I've got an executive order to do this review to, maybe I won't put it out just yet because we don't want to get in the way of unfettered development. So let's just say there's a little bit of complicated policy making going on in the White House right now. And one of the most important issues facing the country.
yeah. It's one of many things we should be anxious about. I mean, it's uh,
Well, if you
you know,
want, don't worry, be happy, buddy.
I think everybody.
Ooh.
It's
Anyway,
I don't know anybody if it's possible the regulatory end to control this at this point. So I don't know. It just feels
maybe
that
not.
way. It's an intuitive
The good
kind of.
news is Stephen Colbert has found his new gig. The day after
Yeah, so he
his
won cable access like after his
well, but
show
he did
closed.
it. The funny part is he actually went back to the show he did for a day before he started. He was kind of closing a loop.
Mhm.
So he did the same Monroe, Michigan community access TV show, which features a woman with 5 names who I
Yeah.
can't remember them all, but she's a former Miss America. So that should narrow it down. A former Miss America with 5 names. I think she must have some Hawaiian in or something. But she was one of the co-hosts. And so they went back. The show isn't like Colbert's show. The show isn't really operating that much right now. So they had a bunch of folks like Marshall Mathers as the town marshal because he's Eminem, but the town marshal Mathers, and folks like that involved. So it sounds pretty fun. And then they destroyed the set. They put it into a dumpster and burned it because
Right. And then, but didn't Paramount have some issues with it? They
well,
did.
Paramount actually CBS Paramount actually financed this thing, even though he left. They financed it. They distributed it technically on the CBS YouTube site and under Colbert's own YouTube site. And they were issuing takedown notices. And then there was blowback. And they're like, okay, fine. You guys just run it wherever you want. No big deal. Go for
They've
it.
already
But
got so much bad
they
press.
actually paid for it. So I was like, okay, you kind of do have the right to do that. But,
Right.
I'm sure it's a very complicated thing for the people at CBS. Like, how do we do this? There's no right answer, right? Except they just said, all right, go to
I
town.
saw something on
Monetize it
social
however you
media
want.
this morning. It was Evan Shapiro. I think I pronounced it right. He had a document that looked like a part of an earnings report from Paramount, and it was, you know, basically the bottom line for the Colbert Show. See, he made money last year, and it was his own guesses. If you look closely to it, it's he made it himself, and there does seem to be an Amber Alerts. Yeah, you can't there we go.
You can click on them, but that's about all you can do. Yeah, an opportunity to edit. So Shapiro's got an estimate he believes that shows that they actually made money last year. And it's possible they did. In fact, it's possible that even though it was already the best rated show in late night TV, broadcast TV, that it's the news of its imminent demise actually spurred ratings and it actually made more money for a while. That's, kind of like you all gather around the terminal illness guy and
I
spend
don't
more
believe it
time with
lost
him.
$40 million. Whether it was making money or not, I don't know. But
We
let's
don't know. And I'm sort of big on like, well, show me the facts, and that's all we've got. So, um, that being
anyway.
said,
There was a lot of discussion about it this week, and I actually think you don't like to see voices thrown overboard uh, for ideological reasons. Business reasons should determine this. But if you're going to throw something overboard, given the circumstances, I thought that was almost forgivable compared with what they're doing to the news division and Barry Weiss is doing. So,
yeah, Barry Weiss is definitely making a bigger hash of things they want to allegedly keep. So,
yeah, we went over that.
and
So, I
it'll
mean,
be it'll be fun to see what Colbert does next. I mean, he had a sweet, goodbye thing. Paul McCartney was his last guest. It's been quite the progression. I mean, it's like Lou Gehrig should have had this kind of goodbye, but didn't. And as far as I know, Stephen Colbert doesn't even have like a horrific terminal disease or anything other than CBS itis. Um, it's interesting because I quoted S&P Global Ratings, which basically is rating the debt for the combined Paramount and Warner Brothers at BB plus, and will drop it down to BB when they finally merge, which is called that sort of borderline state that could go either way. It's fragile companies that are junk slash
right.
not investment grade slash high yield. Take
So
your pick of
what are the
adjectives.
consequences to that? That doesn't raise the rates, does it? I mean,
It
those are
raises the rate that they have to pay
it does.
investors, institutional investors, who are, because they're taking higher
Mm,
risks to take on that debt. And so that at a time when rates are
mm,
going up amid inflation and war and all that stuff could
right.
be problematic. It's like just a little chunk of change. It's going to go out the door for a long time to
Mm,
come.
mm,
Warner Brothers also had to ask all of its debt holders to vote to change the terms of their loans so that um, when the merge thing takes that 35 billion and merges it with the 49 billion in new debt, um,
mm.
it all works together instead of breaking covenants and defaulting loans, which would be bad. So that's where they are right now. It's going great. S&P said, look, they 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 could become a real
Mm.
powerhouse of entertainment. Absolutely could happen, but there are quote significant risks to that.
Right.
And the debt is part of it. And it's like they're going to have to extract as much money out of TV at the same time, out of broadcast and cable, and it will own 30% of all views in television. 30%. It will have to extract that money, even as it's shrinking everything and
Mm,
reducing overhead and duplication and all that stuff. And that's a very tough tightrope to walk. So they could do it.
30%.
Absolutely could do it. But
Yeah,
you know,
that's not an antitrust concern.
and the other thing that's of note, because you raised it earlier in the show, the NFL rights will cost them probably $1 billion more. That means less original program spending elsewhere, because they're going to have to cut somewhere because they can't spend
Mm.
more in total. So basically, it's going to be the NFL network, but
You
with
have
like tracker.
Aaron Ross Sorkin, who was on 60 Minutes talking about the coming bubble burst, which I guess, maybe not depression level pain, but perhaps Great Recession level pain. And if you're that extended, uh, when advertising rates and everything just plummet, what happens to you? I mean, that's 30% of the eyeball generation just goes away. It's conceivable.
Right. Meanwhile, Netflix trying to grab whatever's left over of the eyeballs it doesn't already control. I quoted Mika Patton saying, who's with a vertical focus tool maker, talking about how Netflix They did a deal with iHeartMedia for Charlemagne the God's morning show, and they're going to show that daily. So all of a sudden they have live breakfast time daily talk show. That's not an area they were in before. And they're also getting into some really interesting other stuff. So they're scooping up all these. They've got this deal with that it's not really a sequel. I guess it's a prequel to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood called Cliff Booth with Brad Pitt, and they're going to
Yeah,
give
I'm
it a
looking
two
forward to that.
week. They're going to give it a 2 week IMAX run. And I love Brad Pitt. He went to the same university I did, was
I
a
like David
journalism
Fincher.
school major. He was a journalism school major at Mizzou before he said, yeah, screw that. This journalism thing's got no future. I'm going to go be an actor because that's a real opportunity. And it turned out he was right. But Cliff Booth is going to get an IMAX run. He's playing an iconic stunt performer, so maybe they'll need the big screen to show off all the cool stunts that Cliff Booth will do. But it's an interesting thing. They're getting into the premium showings with Narnia and now Cliff Booth. Again, it's theatrical. It's another area where they haven't been, and they're going to be there. So Netflix vacuuming up what's left of our attention span that they didn't already grab.
Well, something they don't own. And the conversation started a nice West Side digital mix this week, by the way.
Yes. Well, actually last week, but yes, it was great.
Yeah. I thought it was, maybe it was the free martinis. I'm not sure. But it was good conversation. I met Dylan Abrascato, who's the president of the media company Technology Business Programming Network, DBPN. You may know him.
A daily talk show on technology based up in the Silicon Valley. Yeah.
I was talking to Dylan and one of the halves, John Coogan, who's a startup guy. Him and Jordy Hayes, another startup guy, both based in LA, not wanting to move back to Silicon Valley, started a podcast focused media business that sort of was light on newsletters, opposite of us. Pretty much the same day, October 2024. Unlike us, they veered into 70,000 subscribers and growing. And some of the most, Satya Nadella,
the biggest names. I mean, they get all the big names, but they also come out daily.
Yeah, well, they do 3 hours a day, 5 days a week,
yeah,
from 11 to 2. And it's one big name after another. And some of them are not big names, just really smart people. They have one guy who's sort of an expert, who's a recurring guest, who's an expert on China business and economy and geopolitical force exerted. And he's just, these guys, this guy just doesn't get up and talk. They ask him really good questions. They do their homework. I guess they get there this is our offices in Hollywood. They get there at 6 a.m, work out, and then get started on production meetings. They've got 10 people working for them. They're booking great guests. They now have the resources of OpenAI, which wasn't our discussion. It was for Emmy Magazine. They're talking about they're trying to get some love for emerging formats. And I think, you look at what they do. It's not a couple of guys talking in their offices at home. It's they have a dedicated studio. In the case of Coogan, he grew up with a filmmaker father. That was the business. He always had an appreciation for, production work and shooting things and an eye for it. And it was, instructive to me. I've been meaning to tell you, maybe Dave, we should spend, $100,000 and buy a studio and invest in some high-end cameras. You know better than I what we should get, but it was the whole package is very buttoned up, and they're engaging guys. They're smart. They know how to do the on-air thing. So it's
I just want to note they also were acquired by OpenAI.
Right, I mentioned that
about a month ago. So, it was kind of an odd purchase, but
yeah.
But they're trying to get it was a showcase. We're right in the middle of Emmy voting season. And this was a showcase. Rick Margowitz, who I've known a long time and handles a lot of award stuff as a PR strategy guy, lovely fellow, known for a long time, set this up to try to showcase them both with West Side Digital Mix and with the Emmy emerging media peer group, which is one of the biggest peer groups in the, I don't know, 18,000 members of the Television Academy, which votes on the Emmys.
Right.
And they'd give out the interactive Emmys, and they would like to get something for what TVPN has become actually in a very short time. It is interesting to see things like that and Charlemagne the God's thing and its deal with Netflix, and think about, as Colbert sunsets, what talk shows will be in the future and where they will fit in. And I find that a really fascinating question, much more so than whether Colbert was making money or not in his last year. I mean, he was making money. He had a $20 million a year contract. Whether his show was making money,
Coogan said something interesting. I mean, these are guys that they don't consider themselves journalists. They consider themselves, TV personalities.
Rich bastards. I think that's what they consider themselves as, rich bastards.
I came away impressed. So,
technical term.
But they talk about their audience. Oh, we only reached 70,000 people. And I'm like, boy, howdy, if we had, give us 10%, just 10, we'll take it. You'll never hear from us again.
Well, the idea is to continue hearing from us with those 7,000 people.
And we always talk about, to our sponsors, our controlled circulation acumen. I mean, that 70,000 people, advertisers would, in the technology space would love to reach. I mean, it's a very influential segment. And if it grows to, let's say, over the next 5 years, 700,000, sky's the limit. I mean, it's...
Well, yes, if OpenAI continues to grow and not collapse in some possible bubble. Yes, you're absolutely right. It'll be fine. What could go wrong? That's what I say these days. What could go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, it does. We didn't get into it because it wasn't the forum for that. But you wonder, obviously it affects Sam Altman's next guest stint on TBPN. I would think.
Yeah, it should be a little gentler.
But what about everybody else? How do they see the
platform? Yeah, what does it do for the next Elon Musk appearance on TBPN, for instance, after the trial that was ended with, missed your statute of limitations, Mr. Musk. Sorry, none of this matters.
Yeah, that was not a great look.
Anticlimactic, I think, is the term, and it was not a great look for anybody. But yeah, when you make a deal with one of the major companies, one of the 3 or 4 biggest companies you could be covering to finance you, it gets very complicated about how you do what you do. And again, they don't think of themselves as journalists, but it's like you're something. You didn't go, you weren't Brad Pitt, you didn't go to the University of Missouri Journalism School, and yet you're asking people journalistic questions. You bust your asses to be prepared and ask thoughtful questions about where things are going. That feels journalistic-ish or truthy or something, to pull out the old Colbert Report.
I think there's always this sort of and I don't blame people, because if you look at our track record for monetary success, it's not great. But there's this sort of oh no, we're not journalists. I remember.
No, that's the kiss of death, buddy. Oof.
I was talking to these
guys. That's the anti-success.
Remember Wet Paint was a startup of some note. I think it was out of Seattle, this was 15 years ago. And I was talking to its founders. I'm like, God knows we're not journalists. They were doing interviews and making content that looked like journalism, but they didn't want to, use that word. And I think...
Well, and Jon Stewart, who carved out a pretty good little career there, saying, we're not journalists, we're comedians. So,
yeah,
kind of worked out. But for a long time there, they were the most trusted journalists in America, even though they were steadfastly not journalists, but comedians. And I guess there's a lesson there. We just have to be funnier, Dan. Let's just work on that. Let's be funnier.
Yeah.
It could happen. Anyway, we should wrap this puppy up.
Yeah, I'm going to do a quick shout out. We're going to expand a little bit. Dan Jones, a longtime journalist for Light Reading and most recently Fierce Networks, is going to be covering wireless and cloud computing and data centers and a lot of issues that we're interested in, but just are too lazy to learn about. That's not it. Maybe
maybe there's only so much natural intelligence in this giant pineapple of a head to be spread across every frickin' corner of technology and entertainment and media.
And that
includes
that's what original names. Next TMT Networks will launch June 2nd. That's a week from today, Tuesday. And you're not going to automatically be put on that list. If you want to be put on that list, send an email to Daniel@nexttmt.com and I'll put you on there. And it'll grow. If you're not on it, it's going to grow big like TBPN, and you'll be sorry. So
yeah. Well, and so do that. And it'll be good for them, good for us. It'll be interesting. It's a bit of an experiment in distribution and syndication. And if you want to get the Next TMT newsletter delivered to your email box twice a week, go to nexttm, as in media, tmt.com and sign up. It's free. Can't beat the price. Our sponsors love it when you go and check them out, and we love it when our sponsors love something. Not that we're conflicted in any way whatsoever. And you can also get this here podcast, Next TMT Talks, on audio form and video form on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and Spotify and other fine purveyors of audio entertainment. In the meantime, thank you, everybody, for listening. This is David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT, and my colleague and co-founder, Daniel Frankel. Over and out.